Thanks, Mark. I always say to everybody, the one-way team is the best team I've ever been on. And so we're grateful that they allowed Love Ottawa to move on to their platform about 6 years ago. I want to say as I begin that Tim Day is also with us. And Tim is, in terms of the Canadian scene, he's the point person for Movement Day here in Canada. And there's things developing. And talking with Tim, one of the things that sometimes, because it's called a day, it sounds like it's event-based. And really in Canada, it's an ongoing conversation. It's a way to resource and encourage cities all across the nation. And it's developing. And Tim Day, Tim, why don't you stand at least and let's say hi to Tim again. And you're going to see a lot more of Tim. Tim's coming back to our city in March for a day for leaders. So we're excited to keep working with Movement Day Canada as well. This next hour or so, how are we doing for time? Is kind of the wrap up, and I'm going to be tag teaming with my guy who's been a mentor to me, and I'm so glad to have here, Tom White. So we're going to try to bring some concluding thoughts to our time together. We got some other kind of special things we want to do as we close. But I do want to suggest to you that as we've been talking about CAPITALYZE, that we need to kind of demystify the title. You guys got my slides ready, right? Now, just for those of you who are real grammar grannies, I was going to say Nazis, but we know we misspelled it. That there is no Y in CAPITALYZE, and we intentionally misspelled it. We did that to confuse you, intentionally. So just so you know that we just felt like the way actually back in the old days in Middle English times, they often spelled things with a Y that we now spell with an I. But you know, the normal word capitalize, they use the I word, the I letter in it, is actually kind of feels stodgy to us. It's about money and finances and, you know, capitalizing things. And we really felt this was more like a conference. In fact, many of you got the name wrong half the time. You keep calling it Catalyze. And we're really glad about that confusion. We are actually hoping you would make that confusion, because there is an appropriate Y in the word catalyze. And because Y means something about motion, it's more about this idea of mobilizing, energizing, and catalyzing. And so we wanted you to be thinking that way and get mixed up and muddled when you thought about capitalize. We are not trying to be anal about this, but you'll also notice every time we spelled it, we capitalized it. Did you notice that? Some of you, oh yeah, it's in capital letters, which we know today in the 21st century is not appropriate. It's confusing, it's not appropriate, because in our Twitterverse world and in social media, you don't capitalize things unless you're really angry, right? Like if somebody capitalizes something, they're either angry or super excited. And, you know, you try to explain it, just my thumb hit the shift key and, you know, doesn't matter. They think they got to have now a long conversation with you to kind of de-angerize whatever the word is for that. And especially for us passive-aggressive Canadians, it's kind of a national trait. It's troubling when somebody sends you a tweet or put something on social media to you that's capitalized. Except the other place where you might capitalize something in the 21st century is if you're super excited about it, right? And that is, well, we're not angry about living in Ottawa most of the time, but we are super excited about what God is doing in our capital city. And so we've capitalized it. And we think that's okay, because in the scriptures, Paul got excited about what God was doing in city churches. He writes to the people in Thessalonica this. He says, "We ought always to thank God for you, brothers and sisters, and rightly so, because Your faith is growing more and more, and the love every one of you has for each other is increasing. That's the kind of excitement we have about our city. Faith is growing, love is increasing, God is on the move. And so we decided to call this conference CAPITALYZE. It's true, we're here in the nation's capital. We'll say something more about that. But we've also used these words that are been on the screens the last few days. So we want to talk, why did we say celebrate? Well, we think there's a ton of things to celebrate, and we haven't been able to get everybody up on this platform or into a workshop about the things we're excited about in our city. We think there's so much to celebrate. We had an amazing night last night to celebrate some of those things, but we know that it's scriptural. It's also really appropriate when God is good and faithful to say thank you and to come together to celebrate that. There are times when we have to mourn. In fact, as a city, really the last week we've been in mourning. It's been a strange feeling. We're celebrating God's goodness, but many of you know we had a tragic bus accident just 8 days ago now. 3 people killed, 23 injured badly. And so our city's been in mourning. And that happens in other cities. In Toronto, some of you are from Toronto, 2018 was a tough year. 2 terrorist attacks is what they were on Yonge Street and then in the Danforth. And so we know there's times to mourn and there's times to grieve, but there's also times when we come together to celebrate because God is good, so good to us. And I'm just going to mention a couple of things. I was up in our Love Ottawa workshop a few minutes ago and somebody kind of asked this question. I said, I'm going to talk about it in a few minutes. But what is there to celebrate in our city? So many things, so I'm going to pick 2 out of 20. But an example of something we celebrate is the fact that we have marketplace leaders in this city who are amazing. And you've seen some of them on the platform. You can go to the back of Ministries and Marketplaces, the back page of the program, and see so many of them who've got behind this. They've been introducing speakers, they've been doing workshops, and they're not just people who pay the bills, though they often do that, but they are doing amazing things in the city. And one of the things that's amazing about that is this is not Toronto or some other major industrial or financial center. The main product in Ottawa that we produce is red tape. Right? I mean, we don't have a huge business community. We don't have tons of industry. Our industry, 130,000 people in this city work directly on the paycheck of the federal government. And then there's tens of thousands more that work in related consultants or NGOs or groups that essentially get their funding from our federal government. So this is a city of bureaucrats and civil servants. Not that they don't, some of them do make a lot of money, but the fact is we don't have a lot of business. So the business people we have, and some of the people you've been seeing, it's amazing to me that they work hard together and they create so many things and they get behind so many organizations. We're just one of them, essentially, that they make happen in the city. And so I'm super excited and super wanting to celebrate the marketplace leaders in our city who really have been the story. There's, the One Way Love Ottawa story is the One Way was started by business people who wanted to bless leaders. So we celebrate them in this weekend. It's one of the things we're celebrating. It's not the only thing, but it's a huge part of that. We had a seminar as part of this conference by Rick Heemstra, and it's serious research that's been done about the challenge of how our young people, or especially out of high school, are not making the transition in their Christian faith as they go off to universities. It's a huge challenge for us as Canadians and probably other places. But you know what? There's another story in Ottawa, and I hope it's true of other cities. God is doing something among young adults in our city that we want to celebrate. You got to see some of them in the room. There was just a workshop with what we called our next generation of leaders today. And they're doing amazing things. They're starting new ministries. They're trying things that we would never have dreamed of, like taking on porn, Strength to Fight. We've had Josh Gilman here being our social media guy, and so many others. There are prayer meetings going on in our city and evangelism movements in the last few years started by young leaders. And we want to see them excel. We want to see them build on the foundation we're laying and build a superstructure. I was saying to one of those young leaders over lunch yesterday, you know, all of this that you're seeing, it's just the foundation for what you guys are going to do. And we have churches full of young adults in our city. Some of them are 90% filled with young adults, with the young dynamic leaders. I would say we probably got 10 or 12 growing dynamic young adult churches in our city. You might be jealous if you're from another city, but maybe that's happening in your city. Let's not give up on that generation. We celebrate them. They are not just our future, they are now leading. And we celebrate every one of you who's a young leader in our midst today. Could just keep going on about celebrating, but I want to talk a bit about collaboration because it's one of our themes. We celebrate the spirit of working together this weekend. We remind ourselves that Jesus is the one who said, I tell you, open your eyes and look at the fields. They are ripe for harvest. He also challenged us, the harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. Ask the Lord of the harvest, therefore, to send out workers into his harvest field. And immediately after he said that, he said to those same disciples, go, I'm sending you. So there is work to be done. There are harvest fields to be reaped. And it requires capitalized labor. That is, we need to put the resources into that. Unity is critical for this. I loved what, I've all these great thoughts about unity and stuff, but then we had these speakers come and they said it in such eloquent and powerful ways. Kevin Palau last night talking about how unity is the great multiplier. It is. That's what we've seen in the city. That as we begin to get together, it's not 1 plus 1. It becomes 2 times 2 and 4 times 4, and the multiplication is what unity is all about. And so we've used this weekend to do a couple of things. Maybe you didn't know were going on, but there's a number of new teams that are coming out of the gate that this was their opportunity to start telling others about a new opportunity to collaborate in our city. And so we're launching some things this weekend, and we love to see new teams form around new ideas. Our teams in Ottawa, if we're going to work with them, have to be interdenominational. They have to be people from different backgrounds. In fact, we found this, that the more variety, the better the team. Sorry to say for the pastors in the room, the old way we used to do it by putting a committee of pastors on something, we've learned not to do it that way. Sorry, it's just the margins. You guys, I'm a pastoral leader still, and I know we have marginal time for things. So we got to get into the next level of leaders, and that's part of what we're capitalizing right now, is the next group of leaders. The elders, the deacons, the lay leaders in our churches are beginning to find each other and work together. And they do extraordinary things when we release them. So collaboration is going to a new level as we move beyond just the pastoral leadership. We like them on a team. We like a few of them, but not too many. So we can get the marketplace people and the housewives and the younger leaders into those teams so they really go somewhere. We always see in most cities amazing stuff, collaboration going on among women. Women's ministries usually thrive. And we celebrate what women are doing in our city. We have amazing women leaders in our city. We have, out of One-Way Ministries, we have our own brand, Lift Ottawa, that Mark's wife Tracy leads, and my wife Terry's on her team, and Ministry to Pastors' Wives and Women in Leadership. Great stuff they do. It's easy, it seems, to get women to work together. But you know what's extraordinary in our city is the men working together. Really. we had a workshop. I was a little worried about this workshop. We pulled together, I think, 5 of our men's ministry leaders and put them in the same room. Now, I wasn't super worried. I mean, they're very great leaders, all of them. They're doing amazing things in our city. But what's amazing, really, is they're no longer competitors. They're on each other's team. They send each other to each other's ministries. Somebody's doing a retreat. The other men's groups send other men from their teams over to those retreats as well. And the collaboration among men's ministries is just beginning to produce incredible dividends as men get into the labor force of the Christian church in our city. So that's one of the things I'm celebrating. I should say this, that you've heard it already, so we won't belabor it, but we still think there's much work to be done. We have about 15 teams that have been raised up in the last few years. My boss, Mark Peterkins, has suggested that we need to double that in the next few years. And, what does that mean? Well, it means our team has to expand, but it means we need to hear about more dreams. Because the way we work is we go looking for dreams. And some of you even this weekend come and said, well, I've got a dream. And I said, well, then you need a team. And part of my job and our team's effort is to begin to find those with you, pray for who your teammates are supposed to be. And often our teams, you should know this, that the beginning of an idea, it can take usually 6 or 12, sometimes 18 months before that team's gelled enough that we're ready to go public with something. The Big Give team, it took 18 months from the first time that Kathy came, actually longer than that. When we talked together and we called pastors and leaders together, it took another 18 months from that first meeting to get the first event out the door. The more time you plan, the greater the impact if you do it right. So we're learning how to work with teams and how to get things on a good foundation. I'm going to move on because I could spend all day talking about teamwork. There has been this image of cross-pollination. And we are so grateful that in this room this weekend, we've had people from many other cities. And we may not have mentioned them all the time, but you've met some of them. You met the folks from Halifax. Well, they kind of met everybody else. They've been going around stirring up trouble since they got here. They arrived late, and they've been stirring up trouble ever since. But we've had a great team from Toronto as well. And I think some of them might have decided to try to drive through the snowstorm, but most of them are still here in the room. Thank you for coming the 5-hour drive down to 401 from the Toronto area. Also beyond that, we had folks from Hamilton, another hour, Guelph, Cambridge, down that way. We've had folks from Peterborough. These are Ontario cities we're talking about. And some others I'm trying to remember. We've had people from Montreal and Gatineau that have blessed us, that always bless us when they come to these events. Those are from Quebec. But we've also had people from Winnipeg and Edmonton. And so we've been enriched by them being here. Some of them have been speaking into our city for a while, like Ian Nairn, who's been helping and coaching our code team from Winnipeg. He's part of that team, is on every one of their meetings through a conference call. And so we know we need other cities. Here's just a thought. It may be true of other nations, but I know this is true of Canada with its 6,000 kilometers from St. John's, Newfoundland to Victoria, BC. If you're from a nation that's smaller than that, which you probably are if you're not a Canadian, you can't imagine how hard it is to do a national conference. You can't do them every few months in terms of airplane flights and stuff. And we know it costs something for some of you to come and cross-pollinate with us. But truly, I believe that the way you have to approach Canada is as a nation of city-states. That each city, God is doing something unique and powerful, and we need to learn from each other. We need to go to each other, one city going to another, saying, come with us, let us go up to the house of the Lord and worship Him together. That's the spirit of Zechariah that we want to continue to live in. We've also been cross-pollinated across, the streams. We know that we need to learn from each other. The marketplace leaders in our city have much to teach those of us who are in the nonprofit, because we're not good at making money. We're nonprofit agencies or congregations. Our emerging leaders have a lot to teach us about how to live in a post-Christendom world, for those of us who are baby boomers. Those who work with the marginalized, and we love the fact that you are leaders and you're leading us into those places. You have so much to teach us about service and about the real world in Ottawa. Catholics and Protestants and mainline historic denominational leaders have so much to teach us. We continue to need to cross-pollinate and grow in those areas in our city. We especially have celebrated our newcomers, our new Canadian leaders who have so much riches from other nations to bring to us, like bees bringing the pollen from other places to enrich our lives and help things to grow. So, I don't want us to end either by not talking about the cross-pollination of our guest speakers who've come. And I can only just say a few words, but I want to thank Gary Schmitz coming to us from Kansas City. And I'm really glad the Lord told you not to use whatever great notes you might have had about Kansas City, and just to speak from your heart and your experience. It's been one of the most powerful things for me. And you know, we invited Gary because I knew from everybody I talked to that Kansas City is the most prayed for city in North America, maybe one of the ones in the world. And so I knew that we'd catch something about prayer, a prayer virus from him. And I really am praying that we, even next week in our City on Our Knees week, that we begin to live out what Gary's deposited in us. We've also had with us over this time Mark Viswasamnanan from India. Mark's become a good friend. He's Mark, you're such a quiet, humble guy, at least from my conversations with you. But we saw the powerhouse you are when you get a microphone in front of you. And but also just the faith that is in your life, the things that God has accomplished, and the faith you have for the future, the kinds of challenges you're taking on. You know, this guy's bringing together, in a nation with not a lot of money, 2,500 young adults from all across India in the spring. That's just one of his projects this year. He's bringing together movement days in other cities, and the 1 billion people live in India. And would you like to go to India? Anybody want to go to India? Put up your hand. Maybe Mark, we can come and help you, some of us. Yeah, we'd love to do that. Thank you for the faith you're deepening in all of our hearts. Roger and Stephen, I really shouldn't put you two together, but you guys kind of are peas in a pod, and from Gather UK, different parts. But wow, we've been stirred just by your spirits, by your high energy. We love the challenging way you've spoken to us. We needed a good. It's, you know, as Canadians, we don't mind if England kicks us in the pants. It's a little different when the Americans do, but it's like mom or dad, you know. It's because you're kind of where we've come from. For many of the English Canadians in the room, or French Canadians, it would be France. But thanks for talking to us really straight and helping us to lift our eyes to what's possible and what's really important. So we really appreciate you both coming, and our prayers are going to continue to be with you as you take on post-Christendom Europe in the days ahead. All right. I know I'm still getting to a few more. We had Kevin with us, and I can't thank him personally, but you know, there's something going to start happening, as Kevin's already promised, to coach us as we grow as a city in evangelism. And so look out, some good stuff is going to happen. You don't have to be an evangelist to be excited about that. You know, that we need as a city to be coached and encouraged and resourced, and Kevin's already promised that we can call him anytime, bring him back, and bring his team. So we're going to look forward to the Louis Palau Associates group working with us here in Ottawa, and I'm sure he's glad to do that for some of you other cities that are here from different parts of Canada. I'm going to talk about Tom in a minute, but that's because I'm going to bring Tom up in a minute. So I'm going to skip you for a second, Tom, and just say some of the others. And we had Glenn Smith with us from Montreal. He's not here right now, but God's brought to us a number of these kind of key leaders who've been with us. Some of you are in the room, and I can't name you all, but you came and you deposited something in our lives. We hope something got traded in the process. We just really believe that cross-pollinating is the way to go, that we're meant to be busy bees helping each other, taking ideas and sharing them across the country. And if Canada's a nation of city-states, we need Edmonton to share their best ideas with us. We need Vancouver to do that. They're doing Mission Fest this weekend, their biggest event of the year. We need Halifax. We need Toronto. We actually really do need Toronto. Ottawa, we need Toronto. And all that they can resource us with. So thank you for coming and helping us cross-pollinate. I want to just, one last thought, most important thought about why we chose the word capitalize, because it's interesting. Jason read this as part of our worship last night. He had no idea that I was going to close with this scripture. But this is, of course, from Colossians. And I would like us to read it together. Could we do that? Let's read this together. Talking about Jesus, our Lord. He is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn over all creation. For by him all things were created, things in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or powers or rulers or authorities, all things were created by him and for him. He is before all things, and in him all things hold together. And he is the head of the body, the church. He is the beginning and the firstborn from among the dead, so that in everything he might have the supremacy. For God was pleased to have all his fullness dwell in him, and through him to reconcile to himself all things, whether things on earth or things in heaven, by making peace through his blood shed on the cross. The word capital comes from the word caput, which is a Latin word for head. Jesus is the capital of the body. When we say we want to capitalize something, what we're saying is we want Jesus to truly be the head, that we would align ourselves to our head, that he's the one who's building the church. He's the one who coordinates it all. What we're saying is we need to get back onto his page. I love what we've been hearing, but it's a serious call that Jesus wants his church back. And he's not just talking about your little congregation or your big congregation. He's talking about the citywide church. He's talking about all his people in the city. And he's bringing all things, as we've been told, all things back to himself, making all things new. And so capitalize means for you and I, at least for those of us meditating on this and saying, what do we need in Ottawa? What do we need in our other cities in Canada? We need to just let Jesus be the great leader that he is. Spend time at his feet, as we've been reminded. Seek him. Don't think we've got the answers. We don't have the strategies. He does. And if we have strategies that are other than his, we'd be wasting our time trying to do them. We need to capitalize. We need to let Jesus be our leader and be our head.